My system boundaries are better than yours. There is this mental image of what a scientist is: an upper middle-aged man with bushy hair, a white coat, and an overactive intellect. We have seen this stereotype many times. And this fictional scientist conducts his research in a lab, together with test tubes, microscopes, and various more or less incomprehensible gadgets. Let's say that this scientist comes to the conclusion that the element logisticum always behaves in the same way under certain specific conditions, where pressure, temperature, atmospheric conditions, field strength, and other variables are held constant. This behavior is, as it turns out, unique and worthy of a publication in a prestigious journal. That the experiment can be reproduced is of utmost importance to the scientists. Others can, if they recreate all the conditions, see for themselves how logisticum behaves and thus validate the scientist's results. For many, this is the image of how science works. We create new knowledge by conducting reproducible experiments under controlled conditions and then interpreting the results. And of course, this works in a lab where we can control all the variables. But what happens if we can't do that? Logistics and supply chain management are so-called systems sciences. What's being studied is not easy or even possible to confine to a lab. The logistics researcher's lab is the reality out there. A logistics system is an incredibly complex combination of companies, people, processes, products, infrastructure, energy, finances, knowledge, ignorance, decisions, lack of decisions, vehicles, equipments, competitors, partners, and much more. Heraclitus said 2,500 years ago that you cannot step into the same river twice. By that he meant that the river is constantly changing and that circumstances can never be recreated because everything flows. You may even have heard the term pantarei. Sorry for my Greek pronunciation there, by the way. With this statement, he put his finger on what still today characterizes much of our thinking and how we reason and argue about complex things. By choosing system boundaries in a smart way, it's quite possible to argue for almost anything. Should we look at tailpipe emissions, or should we include the fuel's production as well? Should we also include the raw materials produced to build a vehicle? What will be the climate effects if we scrap a vehicle prematurely? And what kind of systemic effects does it have on a societal level if many people do the same thing? When the reality is our lab, it's next to impossible to recreate a specific situation. You will always have to make assumptions, to simplify, to make choices about what's included and what's not. And all these decisions affect the result you then get. One could even say that the choice of system boundaries determines the outcome. This is the real crux of most debates in a field like ours. My system boundaries are better than your system boundaries. So when someone refers to the science, you do best to find out which lab the results came from, how they selected what should and should not be included, because it means much more than you think. Thank you for listening.